Hello friends, it's me, and today, Pizza Diner. Let's check out FoodTheory. This guy is killing pizza places one bite at a time. Keep him out from the food theorists. Together, let's go. Let's go.
Restaurants are trembling in fear, and it's all because of him.
Move on, don't stand in front of my business.
Let me be clear.
Whoa! Actually, this gets pretty heated, so I'll just give you the cliff notes. Bleep bleep, bleepity bleep, your pizza sucks. Finally today, I can prove that this man and other food influencers like him have killed the traditional food critic and are coming after your favorite restaurants next. Hello Internet, welcome to Food Theory, the show
Hello Internet, welcome to FoodTheory.
that's 5 stars for any palate. I don't know about you, but being a food critic always seemed like a dream job to me. As someone who loves to eat and experience different restaurants, getting paid to talk about them was right up there with being a Power Ranger when someone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. But nowadays, everybody's a critic. Food influencers have it easier and easier to build a following that can make or break restaurants. Take the video from the opening as an example. That fight was between the owner of Dragon Pizza in Somerville, Massachusetts, and Dave Portnoy, host of the OneBitePizzaReviews and the outspoken owner of Barstool Sports. Since 2015, Dave's been on a mission to taste and rate every pizza shop he can find, and his off-the-cuff, chaotic reviews have become a go-to for diehard pizza fans. And just to be clear, he doesn't actually review them in just one bite. Regardless, his influence in the pizza space has brought about a whole app where pizza heads can rate and review pizza. But Dave's reviews are the focal point of the brand. They don't call him El Presidente for nothing. But El Prez isn't the only food reviewer who's gotten criticism from the restaurant community. Over the years, there's been a slew of influencers who've been accused of biting the hand that literally feeds them. Even relatively wholesome creators like TikToker Keith Lee raised the hackles of certain restaurateurs. The problem is, unlike the food critics that came before, there's no rules that these influencers have to follow. Their reviews can change from one day to the next, and it can lead to restaurants dealing with rabid fans, review bombs, and even having to close down for good. So my goal today is to
That's unfair? That's really unfair.
dig in to see if these professional foodies have killed the food critic and maybe the industry for good. Before we look into today's critics though, it's important that we first understand the history behind traditional food critics. The world's very first published food critic was an 18th century French socialite named Alexandre Balthazar Laurent Grimont de la Reynie. Woo! Jeez, dude. We'll just go with Abelgur for short. Daddy long
18th century, wow, that's centuries ago. Literally 100 years ago, hundreds of years ago.
name over here was best known for his 8-volume La Manche des Gourmands, a series of critical restaurant guides that paved the way for future foodie journalists. But in his time, food journalism was intended solely for the wealthy. Those upper-class diners made the perfect market for the Michelin Guide in the early 1900s, a topic we've talked about before. But for the average Joe, dining out wasn't an affordable luxury. It wasn't until post-World War II that the world of dining became accessible to the common eater. And that is where the modern food critic came to be. In 1957, with Craig Claiborne, the food writer at the New York Times. He was the
Wait, 1957, that is 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2. Around 60 plus 70 years ago. Wow.
first culinarily trained critic and introduced the 4-star rating scale food journalists still use today. And let me tell you, he did not take his responsibilities to diners or chefs lightly. He had a set of rules that he followed in order to give the most objective review possible. First, he never
That's right. Proper rules and regulations set clear limits, set clear restrictions, and clear standards.
eat at a place just once. He'd have at least 2 or 3 meals before judging. Second, he established the modern practice of dining anonymously to ensure he received the exact same experience as the average diner. Food critics who followed in his footsteps also went to great lengths to conceal their identities by wearing disguises, paying with credit cards under fake names, even taking notes in the bathroom between bites. Sure, that's less conspicuous, taking a bite and running to the bathroom and coming back and doing it back and forth, but anonymity. And finally, he refused to eat for free at any of the restaurants he wrote about, paying for each of his meals with a stipend from the paper to avoid any advertising in his column and keeping himself honest. These
To be honest with you, that's good. Those are good rules.
weren't just his rules either. They became the backbone of the Association of Food Journalists Code of Ethics. And yes, that is an absolute real thing. So let's break this down, rule by rule, to see exactly how far influencers have strayed, starting with the first.
Proper code of ethics. Okay, look, I haven't watched this entire video yet. I'm gonna give you my point of view. In this day and age, in 2024, we got so accustomed to lack of ethics. We got so used to lack of dignity, a lack of respect, that sometimes that appears on the internet, that sometimes this code of ethics that's very important. Let's not be wrong about that. It's very important, is missing, and we are very accustomed to it not being there, which is a bit sad.
Multiple meals throughout multiple visits. Like I mentioned, One Bite reviews aren't actually one bite. That said, Dave does just have the one pizza, and rarely does he revisit locations. In fact, a lot of food reviewers tend to just go to a place once to rate it. The issue is, the food that one time might not be indicative of the quality overall. It may have been on a particularly busy night, or when the restaurant was empty and they got more focused treatment. Either way, by going just the one time, even if they do get multiple things on the menu, like Keith or Dave do at times, without spreading their experience out over more than one visit, their audience doesn't get objective information.
Look, I understand that first impressions are important, but if you really want to be a good role model for other people, it's good to revisit again and again and again, to have several different opinions from your own self, like the past you, the present you, and the future you.
Fair for the restaurant, but also a disservice to potential customers who see the review as lukewarm or even bad and refuse to go based solely on one experience this personality they like has had. Which leads us to the next point.
That's not right. It's very manipulative, and it's very wrong.
And the most egregiously ignored. Anonymity? Ha! No one's anonymous. It's literally the point to not be anonymous. All food influencers on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok want is to gain notoriety and be seen by as many people as possible. It's how they go about making a living if they're serious about the profession. This isn't something I'm calling out as a bad thing in and of itself, necessarily. By all means, make your paper, boo-boo. The problem stems from why Mr. Claiborne and other food critics in the past wanted to be anonymous. It prevented any special
Yes, definitely. We don't know that you are Batman. We don't know that you are Bruce Wayne. Definitely. You're a stranger.
treatment that might influence the preparation of the dish and affect the
I am Batman. I'm sorry.
overall result of the review. When it comes to Dave Portnoy, he is very vocal about the way he likes his pizza, to the point that some locations will prepare a pizza uniquely to his taste when they learn he'll be visiting them. As a result, he may give them a review that may be inflated because the pizza he ate happened to be just how he likes it. But that's not the only thing that comes with the lack of anonymity, because it's not just the restaurants you have to take into consideration here, it's all the followers too. After all, what influencers want more than anything is to go viral so they can gain as many as they can. And going viral is big for business, not just for
Exactly. You're going off with one individual's point of view, one individual's POV. It's not right. For example, alright, I'm gonna give you okay, Singapore local dish. Okay, there's a fruit we call durian. It's amazing, it's tasty, it's delicious. But I've a lot of international friends that see the fruit, taste the fruit, smell the fruit, it's like, ugh, it's disgusting. And to me, it's like, what are you talking about? It's the most delicious fruit in the world. So the same exact fruit, to the locals, to me, to everyone that I know in Singapore, they'll say that, wow, it's amazing. Heck, my families from overseas, they also say durian is amazing. Meanwhile, my friends, my international friends that have never come in contact with durian, they'll say that, okay, this is disgusting. I'm gonna... You get the point, right? And if my international friends are food critics, they will rate durian, the fruit in of itself, as pretty low. That's not right. That's absolutely not right.
the food influencers, but restaurants too. Take Dave's One Bite reviews. Through them, he's raised over $41 million to help small businesses during COVID. But even with that, not everyone feels his platform is good for local pizzerias. Obviously, there's the owner of Dragon Pizza, but also last year, Slate likened Portnoy to a pizza mafioso after speaking with a handful of owners that received official One Bite reviews. According to them, with Dave's massive influence, a good review could bring untold fortunes, but a bad one could be a recipe for bankruptcy bankruptcy. Thoughts of his impromptu visits are the stuff that keep pizza makers, or pizza YOLO, up at night. Which is funny because that's usually my response when someone asks if I want pizza. Pizza? YOLO! I'm so sorry for that. But the same goes when you switch platforms to TikTok, where food is arguably even more popular. 36% of TikTok users have visited or ordered food showcased in videos about restaurants, and 35% have actually gone so far as to travel out of state to patronize TikTok recommended eateries. And if you don't believe me, just ask any of the restaurants experiencing the Keith Lee effect. Yeah, TikToker Keith Lee's reviews are so influential that he's got an effect named after him. Basically, good reviews by Lee translate into huge upsurges in business. I'm talking up to 200 more orders per day. This kind of influx of traffic can really save an independent restaurant as troves of fans go out to patronize the spot. I actually saw this firsthand when I hit up a local joint I love that Lee, Keith, not the film theorist, posted about the day prior. What's wild to me is that everyone in that line was intent on having the same exact order as Lee, going so far as to not look at any menus and just placing their phones with Lee's TikTok in the face of the waitstaff. Now,
Okay, I think that might be a little wrong. You're using a Samsung phone in USA, where Apple dominates.
the Keith Lee effect is largely considered a good thing by those who have experienced it. Even restaurants that were forced to shut down temporarily due to not having the supplies they needed to match the sudden demand created by Lee's video agree that his positive reviews were worth the temporary headache. And with positive reviews having the potential to be jet fuel for a business, it stands to reason that negative reviews could likewise have drastic repercussions, driving them into the grave instead of into the foodie stratosphere. But is that actually the case? Luckily, we've got data thanks to Dave's OneBitePizza app. You see, in addition to keeping track of the aggregate of all the Stoolies ratings within OneBite, the app and website keep Portnoy's numerous reviews on record in one easily accessible list. A list that I can painstakingly use as a cross-reference to find businesses that have gone belly up. If there's any correlation between his negative reviews and the longevity of a business, this would be the smoking gun. So I set off to spread my sheets. I heard it, I'm moving on. Now, Dave's had over 1,000 OneBite reviews at this point, and I'm gonna be honest, that's a lot of restaurants to confirm are still up and running. So instead of doing the full 1K, I've decided to limit my data set to the 50 worst reviews Dave has ever given. Additionally, since we're talking primarily about the well-being of independent restaurants, I substituted out any chains, pop-ups, or sports stadium concession stands on the list. This left me with 50 pizza joints that failed to impress Portnoy with ratings ranging from 0 to 4.1. And of those, a total of 15 are no longer in business, making for a 30% failure rate. That's above par for national averages, until you take into account when those restaurants closed. Most of them shut down due to the pandemic, not negative reviews. In fact, some of OneBite's most viral takedown targets are still in business. For example, Dragon Pizza experienced record demand with lines around the block in the aftermath of Portnoy's curse-laden review. But just because their reviews don't necessarily shut them down doesn't mean reviews as a whole don't. In all my research into this, I found one consistent thread between businesses that directly fail or struggle due to influencers. And that's when
What's that?
review incites review bombing on Yelp and Google. Because really, Yelp and Google reviews are the ones that matter. These ratings affect search rankings and sway the opinions of eaters weighing their options on DoorDash and Uber Eats. A 2020 study found that early reviews on Yelp and TripAdvisor could make or break a restaurant, especially if those reviews were negative. Unfortunately, a lot of the negative reviews have nothing to do with the actual taste of food. Instead, they're the result of an influencer's audience feeling morally slighted by a business. Take, for example, the vegan restaurant Earth to Us, which was torpedoed by a mob of negative reviews after the reviewer Mr. Chime Time posted he experienced an exceptionally poor service. This led to a wave of false reviews made by his audience parroting his talking points, and even worse, a slew of harassing slur-riddled DMs to the staff. Even though Yelp eventually locked out reviews, the damage was done and the location had to close months later. Even Keith
That's not good. That's really not good. And look, if you are going to give a negative review, you must understand the consequences that it's going to bring to the other individual. You need to be understanding. You need to be certain that you're going to give a clear and definite negative review. And don't just give it after one attempt. Maybe try a few days later, a few weeks later, a few months later. The collective opinions of all of you, the past you, the future you, the present you, collectively speaking, then give a more appropriate answer, more appropriate rating.
Lee's wholesome reviews have spiraled into mob justice. In January, Lee unwittingly uncorked viral backlash against the Dallas food truck when he left a large tip intended to be split among the local community. When the owner pocketed the change, which, let's be clear, is a complete scumbag move, the internet review bombed her so hard she permanently shut down. Permanently is in quotations because really they just rebranded. But the wild thing about this is that the backlash was so massive and rage-fueled that it actually splashed onto an unrelated catering business that happened to have a similar name to the food trucks. According to the caterer,
Oh, herd mentality, I guess. Humans' herd mentality. I think that's right?
they had to go into crisis mode to set the record straight, and it nearly cost them their business. Going back to the Dragon Pizza fiasco, you can see this sort of fanaticism play out on the OneBite app, giving credence to the owner's reservations about El Prez. In the video, Dave mentions that out of 50 reviews, the user base on the OneBite app rated Dragon an 8, but after posting, the community rating has dropped to 1.4 with 390 reviews. One user even photoshopped poop topping onto a pizza. And I don't mean pineapple, I mean literal poop. So when anonymity is out the window and fan bases start to build around internet personalities, any objectivity surrounding the reviews goes out the window too. And that leads us to the last rule, using a stipend
Which is
or his
very dangerous because we are placing the celebrity on the pedestal. And that's the saying, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. One good example is Mr. Beast. Okay? Mr. Beast, from what I know, and from what I see, he has done a lot of good. He has done more good for humanity, for the planet, than the bad things that they have done. Much more good than the bad. But because, in our day and age where social media, he has been placed on such a high pedestal. One simple mistake, two simple mistakes that's around him, not exactly towards him, but it's around him, can be manipulated, bent, twisted to create false narrative, negative narrative, bad narrative about him. That's not right. That's really not right.
own money for reviews and not accepting free meals. The bad news is, with the power that influencers have in their fan bases, it's paved the way for influencers that are paid for reviews, some of which hold the threat of review bombing against restaurants as a means to get free meals, meaning someone like this food blogger who was refused a free meal might decide to retaliate and give a scathing review, a review that their followers might take to heart and, like we've established, follow their lead and review bomb. But let's zoom out a bit here, because what this rule is at its core, just like the others, is about maintaining objectivity. So not just using your own money or not accepting a free meal that might sway you one way or the other, but not letting any outside influence sway you either. Because unfortunately, sometimes these influencers do let that affect them. Remember that Slate article calling Portnoy a pizza mafioso? Well, in retaliation for talking with Slate for what he deemed a hit piece, Portnoy re-ranked one of the featured pizzerias significantly lower, from a 9.1 originally to a 7.3. A 7.3 is still a solid score, don't get me wrong, but this is a prime example of how these food influencers can be a problem. They can just go back and give a worse review to a place just because they don't like them. Not only that, it gives influencers like Dave more views on these videos, so they tend to lean into the drama. This is ultimately one of the reasons that it's fair for small businesses to be apprehensive of the rise of influencer critics. They aren't held to the same professional standards as the critics of yesteryear, and instead, their reviews are built for a medium that's inherently snappier and more sensational. Plus, when views matter more than anything, they're more likely to lean into drama and confrontation to gain more viewership. After all, people on the internet love a good fight. Once again, despite having less reach, old school food journalists took their responsibility more seriously. That's why—
Exactly. With great power comes great responsibility. Don't misuse it. Be understanding that this sort of power carries a lot of responsibilities, a lot of pressure, a lot of burdens, a lot of expectations. And the unfortunate thing is, with such power, sometimes it can backfire on you.
there used to be a professional code of ethics in the industry. And within that code, there was this guideline for negative reviews based off of Claiborne's rules, which went, quote, "Negative reviews are fine, as long as they're accurate and fair. Critics must always be conscious that they're dealing with people's livelihoods. Negative reviews, especially, should be based on multiple visits and a broad exploration of the restaurant's menu." Ironically, this association disbanded in 2020, the same year that TikTok set the stage as the new frontier for food journalism. In many ways, the internet further democratized reviews, because while food critics like Claiborne did make food journalism accessible to the masses, they still had the gatekeepers of newspaper publishers. Now,
But this sort of gatekeeping, how high is the barrier? How high is the barrier of entry? If the barrier of entry is understandably high or is understandably low, well, it's understandable, right? But if it's irreasonably high or if it's irreasonably low, there must be a purpose, there must be a point, there must be a reason why it's set so low or set so high. You get the point, right?
anyone can be a critic, and any review can go viral. Today's reviewers are a brand in their own, a far cry from the anonymity and objectivity that food critics used to strive for. There's no guardrails to keep influencers' reviews in check. In fact, it's become less and less about the food itself, partially because the influencers don't necessarily have the trained palates that traditional critics did, but also because
exactly, if there's no guardrails, if there's no at least a standard that people can follow, people can trust, well, no guardrails, people will fall. They'll be victims.
visuals are everything now. Studies have found that social media viewers naturally favor gimmicky or visually appealing items over the actual taste. So fundamentally, reviews are approached from different criteria. And when it comes to positive or negative reviews, at the end of the day, they should balance out as more people review a place, each with their own subjectivity. But this is where you come in. Just like traditional critics never base their reviews off of one visit, you shouldn't base your opinion off of just one influencer, because they're judging things that they value, which may not be the same for you. Instead,
exactly. Use the durian example that I just mentioned before.
You should expand your horizons to see what multiple influencers say and see what commonalities their reviews have. So what this means for you is, yeah, the days of the objective food critic are most likely in the past, especially when there's no guardrails to keep influencer critics in check. But there is a lot of good that comes from thousands of people getting a say now. Small businesses have a way better chance of being found and succeeding. Bad or unethical businesses are more likely to be caught and shut down. And more people can be exposed to more good food that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to know about, especially when it comes to restaurants from outside of their city or state. But now, more than ever, you as a consumer need to be a traditional critic to the influencers and be objective. So there.
Santi makes a very good point. There are pros and there are cons. Pros is great, but cons is there's no guardrails. And there is no standards that people keep in mind. You must remember, the restaurants is their livelihood. They literally survive. They literally keep their family alive. They literally keep their employees employed with their restaurant. And if you're going to bomb it with several different, or even hundreds, thousands of tens of thousands of negative reviews, it's going to affect negatively on their livelihood. They literally have a chance of going bankrupt. You literally ruin their lives.
There you have it. Food influencers may have killed the critic, but the restaurant industry is alive and well thanks to them. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit. And hey, did you know that Grubhub has lore? Yeah, to learn more about that, make sure to click the link on the video now, and as always, I'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Do comment down below what you think, and I look forward to what you say about this thing that's happening in our day and age. Maybe 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, things will get better. Maybe. I'm hopeful for the benefits, for the positive development in humankind of social media. Thank you so much. But hey, that's just a theory, a food theory. Bon appetit. And I hope to see you all in my next video. Thank you so much. Subscribe. Thank you.